Good afternoon and welcome to Sheldopedia. It's Sheldon Betteridge here. On today's show, we're going to meet to what will be the new throne to the right, and going to talk about problems with China after I played Creep by Fear.
This thing on. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The show is about to begin. Introducing Mama's Boy.
Tonight, a bad bitch on the good, they gon' eat you tonight. It's that girl, I'm wearing my royals, I could break you. Hey, you a queen, no TLC, there's no hiding from me. I'm a lady in the streets, and I'm teaming if you be. I could take out the trash and take you off of these streets. Let me take out my trash and take you off of these streets. Shut the fuck up, wow, what they are, don't give up on the heart. You don't know how far it goes. Catching by the tail won't let it go. Soon your sins will be exposed. Now you know, yeah, now you know. You don't know how far it goes. Catching by the tail won't let it go. Soon your sins will be exposed. Now you know, yeah, now you know.
Yeah, them ways must be hidden cause you washed up. You better say your last prayer before you get locked up. So used to getting what you want, I ain't gon' give it to you. We burning bodies now, yeah, we singing hallelujah. Yeah, them ways must be hidden cause you washed up. You better say your last prayer before you get locked up. So used to getting what you want, I ain't gon' give it to you. We burning bodies now, yeah, we singing hallelujah. Yeah, them.
You don't know how far it goes. Catching by the tail won't let it go. Soon your sins will be exposed. Now you know, yeah, now you know. You don't know how far it goes. Catching by the tail won't let it go. Soon your sins will be exposed. Now you know, yeah, now you know.
Thank you everybody for coming tonight. Now get the fuck out of here.
Jesus Christ, that song so inappropriate. There was Creep by Fear on Sheldopedia on Arrow FM. A Chinese Communist Party spokesman has urged New Zealand to make a part of a corporation bigger and better for speculation and Beijing that Foreign Affairs Minister Nana Mahuta is growing cold on China. Mahuta, in an interview published in The Guardian on Tuesday, spoke to the prospect of New Zealand finding itself eye of a storm on economic retribution from China as Australia has been. We cannot ignore obviously what's happening in Australia with their relationship with China, and if they are close to eye of a storm or in the eye of storm, we've got legitimately ask ourselves, and maybe only a matter of time before the storm gets closer to us, she said. New Zealand's position on China has been a source by the relations between New Zealand and Australia in recent months, and Mahuta's comments were published days ahead of a meeting between Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern and Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison in Beijing on Tuesday. Foreign Minister spokesman Xiao Linjian responded directly to Mahuta's comments at press conference. We hope New Zealand can carry forward the spirit of striving to be the first and principle of mutual respect and equal treatment, work with China towards the same direction, make the pie cooperation bigger to rise above external distraction and jointly advance China-New Zealand comprehensive strategic partnership, he said. The Global Times, a nationalist tabloid with strong ties with China's Communist Party, published an editorial on Tuesday responding to Mahuta's comments, which said New Zealand appeared to be under increasing pressure as reflected by Pacific Islands nation sudden warning of a possible cooling of ties with Beijing. It's no denying that geopolitical struggles bringing headlines to China and New Zealand relationship as the New Zealand government have been criticised by its Western allies for being soft towards China for some time in the future. Such pressure may continue to affect New Zealand, blocking it from maintaining normal ties with China, the editorial read. We hope that as the government is able to block out external interference to avoid being caused by geopolitical pressure and to enhance mutually beneficial bilateral cooperation with China to a new level. But Mahuta has been contracted for comment in an interview with The Guardian. Mahuta also spoke for a changing nature of New Zealand's mature relationship with China. The relationship with China moved beyond the first. We are the first to achieve a free trade agreement with China to one maturing relationship where we can be respectful, consistent and predictable on the issues that are important to us, but also issues that separate and differentiate our view of the world from China. Mahuta also reiterated a call for business in New Zealand for business to diversify the export markets. This is what has to say. Foreign Minister Martin Mahuta delivered a speech on New Zealand and China relations at the New Zealand-China Council in Wellington.
For all being here, nā mai haramai, kia ora katoa. Indeed a pleasure to have not only an extended group of our members of the New Zealand-China Council, media representatives, but more importantly, of course, here to welcome the Minister, not only to welcome her to the Council as such, but obviously to listen to a significant speech on the Minister's view on our relationship with China as we move ahead. It would be a waste of my time and your time if I spent time talking about who I am or even who the Minister is. Most important, it's to hear the Minister. So please welcome Minister Nanaia Mahuta.
Korihi te pō, korihi te ao. E rongo e turia no matahau. Nō tū te winiwini, nō tū te wanawana. Tū hiki tia rā, tū hapainga mai. Ki te whai ao, ki te ao marama, ti hei mauri ora. Hawaii tangata, kua Hawaii tia oki, oki atu rā koutou. Hawaii ki ta tautau e tau nei, tēnā tātou katoa. Tēnā tātou, I runga I te tini me te rahi o ngā āhuatanga o te wā. E te kaunihira, nei rā te reo karamihimihi ki a koutou katoa. He hononga tangata, he hononga wairua, he hononga whakaaro e tuitui nei ki tēnei I ka pahitanga whakawhiti kōrero. Whiriwhiritahi, whakataua nō hoki ki ngā take ngā kau, nui I a tātou. Mai e te tupua, mai e te tawhito, mai e te kāhui o ngā eriki, mai e tā whiwhi ki ngā atua. He taniwha, he tupua, he taniwha. I begin with the ancestral greeting of my forebears, acknowledging ancient wisdom that has been passed down to this day, acknowledging those who have passed on, those who remain, and locating this discussion between the Council, indeed New Zealand and China, as a testament to the long-standing connections that are evident here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I want to start by acknowledging the important contribution that the New Zealand-China Council makes to our relationship with China. For nearly a decade, the New Zealand-China Council has helped inform discussion, forge connections, and promote engagement through events, publications, and now I've heard podcasts. Given the breadth of our relationship with China, which touches on almost all sectors and groups in New Zealand, I welcome the emphasis of the Council on collaboration, on language and culture, and on public awareness alongside economic resilience and sustainable trade. We've experienced the benefits of a diverse range of members from across the business community, Chinese community groups, local government and iwi forging their understanding and relationship with China. Sheldon, in your Chair's report on the Council's activities last year, you noted that we live in an increasingly complex global environment. That is so true. You also outlined the impact of COVID-19, not only in New Zealand's relationship with China, but on the activities of the China Council. And I congratulate you on your pivot to online and digital activities during this period. In fact, we've all had to pivot in favour of digital platforms. Digital tests aside, however, it's been an exceptionally challenging year. We're all having to adapt and adjust. The businesses represented in this room have shown remarkable resilience and agility in the face of unprecedented challenges thrown up by COVID-19. The government's trade recovery strategy has worked to support businesses in these times, protecting our supply chains and flow of goods across the world, including to China. And as we continue to navigate COVID-19 and what comes next, we are mindful that we were already navigating choppy waters. It's not getting any easier to be a small country. Global competition is intensifying. The international rules-based system is under pressure, and protectionism is on the rise. All at a time when the need for coordinated global action on issues such as climate change has never been greater. Now, more than ever, New Zealand's commitment to multilateralism and to broadening the diversity of our relationships is essential to build resilience as we undertake our recovery from COVID-19. Aotearoa New Zealand's relationship with China is one of our most significant. China is an influential, regional and global actor. It has been our largest trading partner since 2017. This is a relationship in which all New Zealanders have an interest, and it is a relationship that the government approaches keeping in mind all New Zealanders' long-term interests. We have a comprehensive strategic partnership which continues to serve us well, supported by long-standing commitment to our One China policy nearly half a century on. As we approach the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations next year, we can and should acknowledge how far our trade and people connections have come. Pre-COVID, China was our second largest source of international visitor arrivals in 2019, with over 400,000 visitors. We look forward to being able to extend our manaakitanga to Manuwhiri from China again when international travel conditions can return safely to normal. I would like to just quickly acknowledge the New Zealand Chinese Association President Richard Leong and others here today who are among the more than 200,000 New Zealanders who identify as ethnically Chinese. Your diverse community, including those tracing whakapapa back to the 19th century goldfields of Otago, and those who chose their life in New Zealand more recently, plays a central role in the rich exchanges between the peoples of Aotearoa and China. I'd also like to congratulate the New Zealand Chinese Association and Te Roroa and Te Rarawa, Hapu, in delivering the SS Wind no Memorial in Opononi earlier this month. The combined effort to honour the lives lost over a century ago represents the extraordinary history and enduring relationship between our peoples. That relationship continues to be powerful. It is an important part of the historical and contemporary relationship between the people of Aotearoa and the people of China. A relationship built over decades of contact and exchange, whether through formal cultural delegations or significant flows of migrants, tourists and students. This has been a journey. Today we acknowledge the interests we share. Equally, we've become more alert to the values that differentiate us. Let me liken this perspective to the dragon and the taniwha, a metaphor for the relationship to which I will return to later. Members of this council are familiar with the breadth of our engagement with China. Where we can, we pursue mutually beneficial cooperation. Obvious opportunities exist in a range of areas including the economy, agriculture and improving the business environment. We were pleased to sign the upgrade to our free trade agreement with China in January. The upgrade will modernise our existing agreement, now more than a decade old, and deliver new benefits for New Zealand businesses, including new goods and services, market access and trade facilitation. I want to thank the Council for its support of the upgrade. In thinking about long-term economic resilience, we also understand that there is value in diversity. Just as the Council has noted, it is prudent not to put all eggs in a single basket. The New Zealand Government will continue to work with business to pursue a range of trade opportunities. And while COVID-19 constrains our ability to travel, I had the pleasure of an engagement with my counterpart, State Councillor Wang Yi, in December. We agreed that the relationship was in good shape. A similarly constructive call followed in January between my colleague, the Honourable Damien O'Connor, and his counterpart, Trade Minister Wang Wen-tao. Our ministerial contact has been supported by regular conversations at official levels, both in the context of our established officials' dialogues and busy daily engagement in both countries. Exchanges like these help build understanding. We have special opportunities this year as New Zealand hosts APEC. As we work with others in the region to recover from the pandemic, it is hard to overstate the importance of processes that bring together business, policymakers and political leaders across the APEC agenda. And China, which itself hosted APEC in 2014, can make an important contribution. Our two countries engage regularly in other regional fora, including the East Asia Summit and through the recently concluded Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, RCEP. Beyond the regional agenda, many countries, including New Zealand, will continue to engage with China on climate change. The undertakings China has already made and its future actions, along with those of other big economies, will be hugely consequential. It is a statement of the obvious that China's actions are having ever more impact on our regional interests. It is in everyone's interest for China to act in the world in ways consistent with its responsibilities as a growing power.
Well, I have to just leave it there. Next song I will be playing for it's Blue Lady by Hello Sailor. Here we go.
Right.
That was Blue Lady by Hello Sailor on Sheldopedia on Arrow FM. Since raising its budget, Southern show Breezy Wealthy last week, leading figures in New Zealand Labour Party have been painting themselves as socialists, overturning the country's new liberal order, but closer look at the details show how Labour plays a central role in that new liberal order. The revival of socialism in mainstream politics has been one of the biggest developments in the last 5 years. Bernie Sanders' two presidential campaigns had sparked the election of Democrat socialists at every level of US government. Due Corbyn's leadership led to a surge of left-wing membership in the UK Labour Party. And ongoing wins by the party socialists and local governments and all over the country. Now New Zealand's Labour Party is getting in the yak too. This past week, New Zealand saw an apparently spontaneous series of self-outed by Professor Democrat socialists among the country's Labour Party. This deluge of political confusions began with a sadly typical embarrassing change in Parliament to saw an MP from a right-wing National Party, David Bennett, accused Labour MP of Kieran McAnally of being a communist upon being forced to withdraw and apologise for the unparliamentary remark. One of the Bennett fellow National Party MPs instead accused McAnally of being a socialist. Yes, I am a socialist and I'm proud of it, McAnally shot back. And reply quickly went viral. Yeah, there you go, applause. Thank you very much, Brandon, and I'm very proud to say to the good people of Wairarapa that they lead a proud socialist FCR MP. Soon, he was joined by several others. Yes, many of the great socialists side of the house. See Christchurch Central MP Duncan Webb. I stand as very proud member of a great socialist democratic Labour Party. Proclaimed Newland MP Deborah Russell, I'm a socialist. Piped up Tiki MP and a look at one point. The whole thing has really prompted a predictable counter-response from a New Zealand right replica with a henna and sick with a Soviet-style letting to give the right-wing parties attempt their parliamentary rebating as a next logical step for New Zealand's conservative MPs who have tried to dent Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern's in a stunning populated with a series of unsuccessful and incredibly lame talking points crippled from the US Republican Party, from fear-mongering about the UN Migration Pact to an attack on wokeness and race baiting. This past week, New Zealand swore of apparently a beige series of self-outlets by professed Democrat socialists among the country's Labour Party. It also prompted Ardern herself to weigh in, arguing never too. She was a socialist Ardern, once president of the International Youth or Social Youth Professor. I've watched she's grown myself as a democratic socialist, but I have never found these terms in particular useful in New Zealand because we do not tend to talk to those terms here. Here it's more common to say progressive, a member of a Labour Party. To explain, people tend to know what that means. Labour guarded but similarly genuine attempt to try to be a socialist. Labour could be a positive state of a house. Further demystify the word, particularly in a country still something of a hangover, of a haze, of a decades-old neoliberal binge. But more important question is, what exactly does all this posturing mean in this New Zealand Labour returning to its semi-socialist roots? Revenge at last. The occasion of its supposed reverse metaphor Paris high anticipated budget day, with such as that after 3 years of treating water, the government was gearing up to announce something major of Labour after it's just come up from a stunning landslide election, one that gave it the single-handed outright majorities in a first since country's 1996 electoral reforms, moving at the country's public debt is low and interest rates and therefore cost of service and officers whether how Labour would spend orders of political capital and it gave it off the back of one of the world's best pandemic responses. The government has very carefully framed this budget as a reversal of 1981's mother of all budget, one that would right the wrongs put in place by all of the National Party's then Vice Minister Ruth Richardson, who designed the maybe most extreme case of welfare state retreatment in Western world. The framing has in turn largely been rebroadcast in the press, which has been painted by a picture of a budget dyed the deepest red. Labour aligned standard referring to the nickname to the brutal austerity program initiated by Richardson's budget. The 1981 document has aimed to complete the neoliberal revolution started by Labour itself in the mid-1980s, while a suite of reforms has seen a mass sale for state access and dismantling the New Zealand's extensive system of regulations and economic controls has left as well as their states mostly untouched. Russia used several different economic edges, including higher than expected default forecasts and a recent credit card rating downgrade to finish the job, making a steep revenue cut of around 20 to 30% of a centre-piece budget. For results, what you expect, poverty and hunger persistently rose while wealth inequality dramatically widened, with Russia's beloved government surpluses built predominantly on the back of often poor families. Her budget was so toxically unpopular that National Party just barely clung on to the majority, thanks only to distortions of New Zealand's electoral system, and soon removed Russia's from her position, reducing some emphasis on some of her budget's provisions. Okay, so Labour's budget last week has averaged mid-season based on a 3.3 billion boost to welfare, said increment rose over the next year, first in July, then in April 2022, according to the Child Poverty Action Group. CPAG area fact will see families on benefits would eventually get around $40 to $115 more per week, in line with the recommendations made by the Welfare Expert Advisory Group that Arjun conceived 3 years ago and probably ignored until last week. Needless to say, this is all welcome news to a occasion where poverty is not only shockingly high, but is saying stayed frustratingly stacked, even worsening over the course of a pandemic. Locals and Gardner throughout maybe the reality as Labour's budget falls short of a most evasive price, but look closer and encouraging for as maybe the reality of Labour budget falls short of a most effective price, as decisions stagger for boost remains need will now be pointlessly deprived of much needed funds until next year. It is chosen not to forget debt owed to the Ministry in charge of welfare, nor echo to the DEAG's calls will lift pundit sanctions on beneficiaries and skyrocketing living costs thanks to the especially to an out of control housing market and made fees numbers worth significantly less since DEAG's recommendations. CPAG estimates the families welfare will need an extra $100 to $230 per week to stay above poverty, and the Treasury own forecast only see child poverty dropping to mere 1.4 points to 70% by 2023, leaving at least 180,000 kids in poverty. Little wonder CPAG and other experts and anti-poverty campaigners have been bitterly underwhelmed by the government's announcement. They weren't alone. The head of business news said similarities associated for government. Firman could have been more generous with its benefit increases. All for talk of a budget returning Labour to its roots starts to ring hollow when even one of our country's region business advocacy groups thinks the government might steer from helping the poor. Revolution of a mind, what will take relative reviews of all mother of all budget and its malignant legacy of a future requiring that more than just a merciless assault on welfare. Richardson's budget radically overhauled the housing policy, scrapping programs that supported home ownership, replacing income-based rates with market-based ones for state housing, and sold off government's $2.4 billion worth of mortgages that helped struggling families to buy the first times and made cuts to ACC's New Zealand's Excellent Conversation program, while Sheldon is funded to burden from employees to employees' paychecks, and make similar cuts to restructuring for university system, moving it further along the transformed to from a public good to a private service. And it took time for New Zealand's old age pension, the raising of retirement age to 60 to 65 and freezing payments for 2 years. Most controversial when it comes to superannuation, supercharged a clawback on tax higher earner pensioners tender for programs universally. The budget both raised the rates are expanded to the mother people who had to pay it. And all of it was about the nuts and bolts of a practical policy. It was explicitly an ideological project. Then Prime Minister Zimbabwe aimed to arrest New Zealand's drift from work to welfare. End of a blade was permanent dependency on the state and achieved permanent and substantial reduction in the financial and human cost of welfareism. Richardson likewise complained about the exercise about governance, speeding, and she saw the cuts of a statement about their times, so people should be encouraged to lead. She later states once of independence and self-reliance of the fact that wealthy roles were only as full as were because of the economic misery created by the preceding rounds of neoliberal reforms didn't seem to matter. New Zealand's 2021 budget looks less like reputation of Bruce Richardson's ideology if any furthest left you can go while operating under it. In other words, Richardson and her allies aim not just to tinker with select programs but to transform hearts, minds and what was politically acceptable. They wanted to redefine the relationships between New Zealanders and the government. To that end, they successfully drunk to a size of state and the scope of its involvement in the offer economy. They look to make putting debt and surpluses ahead of people a permanent feature of politics. And the budget further tied up for economic policy a trickle-up direction of beneficiaries losing 1/5 of the incomes were as high as third of a single beneficiaries even as the rich prospered, but rather than just throw people off wealthy rates and replace the ideas are underpinned. While the 1972 World Commission on Social Security defined the aim of welfare giving to those disadvantaged as a standard of living much like the rest of the community. By the 1990s, assistance can be viewed as simply safety net, and one carries fair to be discouraged from using much as possible. Needless to say, Labour's budget has nothing appropriate to this budget, nor does even try to reverse all of it. If anything, shows how firmly New Zealand's remained under the thrall of his 30-year-old document, which is instead a surplus obsession with its current government, which considered justified to resources to a more public investment by putting debt fears and even took care to frame for this budget, keeping a lid on debt and triggered responsible to return towards the surplus. Through targeted investments, Labour continued to refuse to get rid of benefit centres and with less fundamental acceptance of Bolton's and Richardson's moralistic distance for welfare and thus will plan for separate unemployment insurance scheme and fears little sign beyond the measures necessary for the pandemic, but party has planned out to permanently re-expand the size and scope of government. In this respect, New Zealand's 2021 budget looks less like a representation of Ruth Richardson's ideology than the first left. Why you operating under it? For more things change, it's heartening to see New Zealand's Labour government finally acting on years of pleasant demands to take proper measures of lifting benefits. It's good to see to them a bit slightly adopting a common sense point that putting money in the pockets of at least well-off is actually good for the economy. Limited through this announcement is not even Helen Clark's Labour government in the 2000s dared to try wholly under resistance welfare because a sign of things are really slowly shifting. Personally, I prefer a lineup of self-described liberals governing like a socialist rather than a group of proud socialists governing like neoliberals. But does this make a Labour Party socialist? If so, it must be a nice unusual social party in the world. Labour refuses to implement the wealth tax on others, raise taxes on the rich while continuing placing more and more burden on the consumers through regressive consumption taxes is for policy's decision, particularly around the housing market. Has fiercely contrary wealth at the top while raising housing costs for ordinary cases in response to rich refuse to implement rent control. It continues to severely underinvest areas like healthcare, infrastructure and climate change. Alternative concerns have put out of step with even the world's right-wing politics and economics. And one of her first high-profile flights that picked up in its newly gained political capital was with the public sector workers in the union that represents them. One that tried to hit with pay freeze. Politics is changing utterly as it all over the world, but New Zealand remains a laggard behind the rest of the globe. Still, so families stuck in a decades old ideological framework that never worked for most people, but it's especially horribly unsuited to meeting the civilizational crisis of today. It's nice that Labour is not afraid to wear socialists in Europe, but personally I prefer the lineup of described liberals governing like socialists rather than a group of pro-socialists governing like neoliberals. Next song I will be playing for is Odyssey by Ruby Frost.
The world you'll never see.
That was Odyssey by Ruby Frost on Sheldopedia on Arrow FM. Right. Continuing on as part of New Zealand Music Month, that I'm gonna play an 80s track, which is I'm gonna play There's No Depression, he's a Blam Blam Blam.
In this country, we have no queues, we have no drug addicts, we have no racism, we have no sexism, no, there is no depression in New Zealand. There are no teeth in our heads. There is no depression in New Zealand. We sleep in a well-made bed. Oh, but everybody's talking about World War III. Yes, everybody's talking about World War III. We're as safe can be. There's no unrest in this country. We have no SIS. We have no secrets. We have no rebellion. We have no valium. No, there is no depression in New Zealand. There are no sheep on our farms. There is no depression in New Zealand. Oh, we can all keep perfectly calm. Perfectly calm. Perfectly calm. Perfectly calm. Perfectly
There was no depression in New Zealand by Blam 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 on Sheldopedia on Arrow FM. Right, I'm gonna tell you the most right-wing countries in the world. I'm going to show you the most far-right countries in Europe. Europe, which are Denmark, Danish People's Party. 21.0 Germany's Alternative for Germany, Netherlands 2.0 Freedom Party, National Front Francis 40.0, Swiss People's Party with 29.0, Italy's Northern League with 4.0, Finland with 38.0, Sweden Democrats with 30.0, Slovakia El Slovakia with 8.0, Hungary's 29.0 for Job Again, Austria's 29.0 for the Freedom Party. Right, the next song I will be playing for is She Has a Day Away. There was a day away by She Had on Sheldopedia on Error FM. The next song I will be playing for it is Sweden is so Avenged only one. Oops, I have to tell you the fact of the day again. Sweden is so version only 1% of garbage ends up in a landfill. The final song of the day is it will be Savage Love by George 685 to finish off.
If I woke up without you, I don't know what I would do. Thought I could be single forever till I met you. Usually don't be falling fast. You got a way of keeping me coming back to back. I just found out the only reason Did somebody break your heart? Looking like an angel, but you're savage love. When you kiss me, I know you don't get two fucks, but I still want that. Your savage love. Your savage love, love, love. Your savage love, love, love. You could use me, 'cause I still want that. Baby, I hope that this ain't karma, 'cause I get around. You wanna run it up, I wanna lock it down. Usually don't be falling fast. You got a way of making me spend up all my cash. Every night and every day I try to make you stay, but you're savage love. Did somebody break your heart? Looking like an angel, but you're savage love. When you kiss me, I know you don't get two fucks, but I still want that. Your savage love. Your savage love, love, love. Your savage love, love, love. You could use me, 'cause I still want that. Your savage love. Your savage love, love, love. Your savage love, love, love. You could use me, baby. Savage love. Did somebody break your heart? Looking like an angel, but you're savage love. When you kiss me, I know you don't get two fucks, but I still want that. Your savage love. Your savage love, love, love. Your savage love, love, love. Girl, you could use me, 'cause I still want that. Your savage love.
That was George 605 Savage Life on Sheldopedia on Arrow FM. Well, that's it for Sheldopedia. I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye bye.